Hey guys, welcome back. So before we actually jump into the video and where I talk about how my app cycle went in general and whatnot, I did want to share something really interesting that happened last week. And that is, last week I received a rejection. I think it was my last rejection of the cycle from a med school that I applied to. I think it was exactly a year ago. And I don't know. To me, I think that was the first time I actually laughed after getting a rejection. Usually, it's filled with dread, throughout the cycle as you're waiting for decisions. But I think I actually laughed at this one, and I showed my dad, and he did the same because honestly, it made no sense that it took an entire year for them to review my application and decide that it was rejection worthy. The most probable fact is they probably made that conclusion like a few months into the cycle after I submitted my application, and it just goes to show you how this process takes way too long. It's a drawn out battle, and you're not gonna fare well if you expect quick results. The reason why I'm sharing this right now, and I felt like telling you guys this, is because when I go through some of the forums, I see people asking, when's the earliest date you get to hear back from schools? When is the time frame you can expect to get a decision? And the fact is, unlike undergrad college admissions, med school admissions just takes way too long. I mean, that's exactly why you need to apply a year in advance of the year that you want to actually matriculate and get in, start your schooling. So I don't know. I was just astounded by the fact that I could still get a rejection. I know people on Reddit were talking about how they were actually sitting in on their orientations and they got this rejection, and how they just laughed at it. And I just found that to be very. It really says a lot about med school admissions, and it also kind of made me realize that I probably should have been better informed about how long this process actually takes. I mean, just like all the people on the forums probably asking these questions, I was the same. I was waiting at the start of the cycle, counting down the days for when am I going to get my interview invites, when am I going to get my admissions decisions. And the fact is, looking back on it today, I realized that if I had spent my entire time looking forward to some arbitrary invite or admissions decision, I would have been crazy. I would have gone crazy. I mean, other than the fact that I had a year, my senior year of undergrad left to keep me busy, I probably would have gone crazy. And so I just want to throw this out there for you guys, who are going to be applying this cycle, to just keep that in mind. This is going to be a very drawn out battle, and you guys need to stick it out till the end. I know you guys can do it. Yeah, you guys are going to do great, but it's very important to demonstrate that quality of resilience. And patience. I think those are the two things that you also need as a physician, obviously. But you really are tested in terms of that in the med school application process. All right, so that was it. Now let's just get back to the actual video.
Yes, adore you all of the time. I like
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Utpal, and I'm a recently graduated chemistry student from the DC area. I make videos on being pre-med, productivity, and lifestyle. So if any of those things sound interesting or appealing to you, please consider subscribing. Today is the day that I'm finally going to make the YouTube video that almost every med school YouTuber makes, and that is talking about my dreadful number of rejections and my entire application cycle. So I'm going to give you guys as many details as possible, a general overview, but if I don't cover anything specific and you want to know that information, just send me a DM. If I don't talk about it, it's primarily because I want to maintain some privacy, but I would be happy to share that information with you if you send me a DM. So with that said, let's get right into it. So overall, I applied to approximately 30 schools, interview invites at 9 to 10. I say 9 to 10 because I didn't attend one of the interviews. And then my breakdown was half of those were acceptances, half of those were rejections, and then there was one wait list. So there is that. Now, my rejections post-interview were primarily for the interviews I did earlier on. My later interviews were the acceptances. So I think that says something with regards to the fact that I learned something from my earlier interviews, and clearly the experience matters. So before you jump into your interviews, I highly encourage you guys to prepare. Try to do a mock interview. Try to be as prepared as possible. It will make a difference on your interview day performance. So in general, how my application cycle went was the following. So I had my primary application submitted, I think it was around June 10th, verified by the end of the month. Secondaries started pouring in from the first day possible. I think I got 3 to 4 on the first day. Now, the entire month of July and the beginning half of August was filled with secondaries. So there's that. And I know that there's a 2-week rule, but most of my turnaround times were 2 to 3 weeks. Now, don't make one mistake that I made. I was kind of clueless, but there were 3 schools, I think, 1 to 3 schools, I don't remember how many, which apparently when I opened the secondary after 2 weeks of getting it, it said that they wanted the secondary back within 2 weeks. So don't make the same mistake I did. When you get a secondary, go to the portal, open it up, to see if they have any hard deadlines written there, and have a system for tracking things. Have a system for, maybe an Excel sheet where you talk about, maybe you mention the school name, the date you got the secondary, maybe a progress tracker on the essays, how many essays you finished up, how many are left to go, and when you plan on turning it around. It's very important that I think you guys keep yourself organized, because you don't want to miss a deadline like that. It does reflect kind of poorly if you miss a deadline. Like, I still returned those secondaries, but I didn't hear back from those schools, and I think it says something. So yeah, definitely don't do that mistake. Just make sure you keep out for deadlines. Now, in August, I started getting interview invites. So I got 2 interview invites in the first half of August. So at this point, I was feeling all excited. I felt all good about myself. And then dead silence for the next 2 months. So from like the middle of August to the middle of October was dead silence. I got my first interview after those 2 interviews, my third interview, halfway through October. And then, after that, I got a couple more interview invites in October and also the beginning of November. Those interview invites were all scheduled back to back within a 2-week time frame near the end of November. So this was my senior year of undergrad. So this was definitely one of those very hectic times. I was balancing, this was also midterm season. So, you can kind of imagine, I remember one round of interviews was basically an interview on like a Thursday, and then the following Monday another interview that I had to fly out for, and then on the Thursday coming up I had another interview like locally, and then the Monday or Tuesday afterwards I had another interview that I had to fly out for. So it was crazy, and so I think the one piece of advice I'd like to give you guys is some people think when you get an interview invite you have to schedule yourself for the earliest possible date, and my recommendation is schedule yourself for as early as you think is comfortable for you. There's really no thing like, if you attend an interview, in the first batch in September versus maybe October or even November, some people will argue that there is a inherent advantage. If it's a rolling admission school, I can see where your point is coming from, but from personal experience, like I'll talk about my later interviews, I realized that it really doesn't matter. If they were going to take you, they would take you regardless of whether you interviewed in September or in October or November. So don't try to change your plans and whatnot just because you want to get all your interviews in the beginning half of the cycle. It probably won't make a difference. And in fact, I think it's really important that you give yourself some time so that you can get feedback, general feedback, personal feedback, and maybe if you get a decision from the school, they kind of tell you how your interview skills are going so that, you can do really well in those later interviews. But that's just my 2 cents, just something that I've felt. But yeah, so after those long stretches of interviews, I know that for MD schools, the first day that you can start getting an acceptance is October 15th. So I obviously had interviewed already before then. I was waiting for decisions, and October 15th came around. I didn't hear anything from the school that I interviewed at in September. There was one of those schools. That was my first school that I interviewed at. So and I also interviewed on their first interview date. So I was expecting something, but I didn't hear back. And then a couple of days passed by, and actually I got a rejection from that school. So that was a little bit of a bummer. Kind of pushed my confidence levels a little down. But obviously still kept my, obviously knew that there was still a lot more opportunities to do well. And I try to reflect back. I know it's kind of difficult to do in the face of, rejection. But I sat down and I talked myself through the interview day. I thought about things that I could have, done better. And I took note of that, and I actively tried to do better. I did mock interviews by myself. And I just actively tried to make sure that I covered any perhaps answers I didn't convey effectively, cohesively, any kind of maybe any kind of things that I felt I could have done better from the interview. I tried to correct those. So that was basically October. Obviously people were starting to hear acceptances by now. So on this point, don't read SDN forms. Like, trust me. I mean, I love getting extra information, and I will admit that SDN does have some good information there. But Reddit seems to give you the same information with a lot less anxiety. With the SDN, you see people posting their interviews and all their decisions, and it can really I mean, it's just something you don't need, extra level of stress and whatnot. You may be a great person. You may not be someone who compares yourself to others, but, there's just going to be that little part of you inside that's going to be like, man, everyone's hearing back. I wish I hear back. And so keep your eye on the ball. Focus on only your application cycle and try to just focus on getting better, doing better every step of the way. So, I wasn't hearing back. I mean, I was hearing back. I didn't hear news that I wanted to hear throughout October. So then December came around, and that's when I heard back from my first school that gave me an acceptance. Obviously, this was the middle of December, and I was very elated, a little relieved because finally this long application process, it kind of felt like worth it. I remember, when, for example, when I had long stretches of interviews back to back, I'd sit at the dining table, tell my mom how stressed I was, how I don't like traveling. That's just not who I am. My mom and my dad, they were supportive. They would be there and they would just say, it'll all be worth it in the end. You just need to stick with it. And that's really just one. It's not anything new. It's just something that I felt, although it's something that's really small, something you already know, it does make a difference hearing it from someone else. And trust me, you're doing this all for a reason. It's going to be worth it. So, in December, that's what happened. I also got another decision, a second acceptance in December as well. So there was that. And then the new year rolled around. And actually in December, I did get another interview invite for January. And that's actually the school that I'm attending right now. So one of the things I wanted to talk about in this video was how the school that I'm going to be, the school that I interviewed at, that I got the interview invite in December, the end of December, before Christmas, interviewed at in January, is the school that I'm attending now. And I think that says something because, people, they get so worried, there's this other thing called the Thanksgiving rule where, you should probably hear back before Thanksgiving. Well, this school I heard back well after Thanksgiving, and that's the school that, I interviewed at the next month, and I'm going to go to now. So you guys need to remember that, all hope is not lost. You're still in the game. Until the end of the cycle, you're still playing the game. Keep that in mind. You don't need to feel discouraged or something if you don't get interview invites early, whereas all your other friends are. Because I'm telling you, some schools, they just work differently, and you're going to get interview invites later on from a lot of your schools. It's very well possible that you end up getting the same number of invites as someone who got 10 in the first month. You may end up getting 10 in the end of the cycle, or close to the end of the interview season. It makes, it sounds absurd, it sounds ludicrous, but that's, I had one interview invite in December. I had another one come in around January or February. That's the one I didn't attend because that was farther away. I would have to fly out for it. And I knew that given my current options, I probably wouldn't attend that school. So yeah, that was basically it in terms of how my cycle went. After I turned down, obviously, the last interview, I didn't hear back from any other schools. The cycle winds down really quickly once the new year starts. Probably I'd say after February, March is when it really winds down. I know for DO schools, the timeline is a little different, but for in general, this is kind of how it works. Now, I did also want to share one other thing. So in the process, I also applied to another school. I applied to the University of Queensland. So this is actually a school in Australia, if you guys know. They have a partnership with the Ochsner Health System in New Orleans. So if you guys watched one of my other videos where I talk about, I'll give you guys a brief background about myself. I tell you guys that, I'm from New Orleans, so I've been there. I lived there for my entire childhood, so I was actually very familiar with the Ochsner Health System. I just thought the program was really cool, really interesting. And so I wanted to apply. I applied. I did get into that program as well. And of course, for Australia, though, the timeline is very different for when they start school and whatnot. So, but yeah, I wanted to apply to that school. It seemed really interesting. It seemed really cool. And so I did that. In addition to that, I did also want to do one other thing. I did want to apply to schools in the UK. Just because it seemed very interesting. Like some of the schools had very interesting focuses. So I know many students in the U.S. probably don't think about this, but you do have Oxford and Cambridge. Now I noticed that you couldn't apply to Cambridge because Cambridge only takes UK citizens. It seems people who are from a UK from a UK background. But Oxford was open to international students. The problem was, though, that for UK med schools, they expect you guys to take the I believe it was the BMAT or the UK-CAT, which are, their equivalent exams of the MCAT. I wouldn't say equivalent in terms of content and stuff, because they're frankly speaking, it's like comparing apples to oranges. You can't compare the MCAT with those exams. Not implying anything is easier or harder. It's just that, for example, a UK-CAT has a lot of logic-based questions. I think it's similar to the LSAT. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah. So and the main problem was the BMAT is a little bit more similar to the MCAT in my opinion, but the problem was the closest testing centers were very far away. After preparing for the MCAT for so long and kind of feeling burned out, the thought of in the middle of my interview cycle going to traveling maybe all the way up to New York or somewhere even farther away to take this test and apply and whatnot kind of seemed maybe a little bit far-fetched. Maybe I probably shouldn't do it. And so I kind of laid back on that. I didn't take it too seriously, but that was a thought that did run through my head at a certain point in time. So yeah, that is basically it. After, close to the end of the cycle, I boiled down my acceptances to 3 that I wanted to choose between. And how it works for the AMC is they allow you to keep all your acceptances until April 30th, at which point you do need to do, it's not commit to enroll, so that's plan to enroll. So you do need to select as one of the schools to be a school that you plan to enroll at, and then drop the other acceptances. And then you can still be on wait lists, however, and so I was on a wait list, as I briefly mentioned earlier. And shortly after, though, I realized that, the school that I planned to enroll at was the school that I truly did want to go to. So I dropped my wait list as well. I didn't hold on to it, and then I committed to the school. So then you select commit to enroll, and then you commit to the school. And yeah, that is it. So that was my application cycle, guys. I know I didn't give you guys way too many details. Well, in terms of stats, I mean, above average. I wouldn't say I was perfect. I mean, I wasn't. But, I was a chem major with bio and public health minors. I was in my university's honors program. That's just a brief kind of overview of what I had under the belt. But other than that, I do think I was not an extraordinary applicant. I focused on research because I personally liked research a lot. Biotechnology stuff, that kind of stuff is really interesting to me. And genetics research is something that was a particular interest, along with neuroscience stuff. So as you can see, my research interests are all over the place, but these are kinds of the things that I really loved, and I was fortunate enough to be able to do research in almost all of these areas. I was in multiple labs throughout undergrad, yeah, so all right, I think that's it for this video. If you guys have any questions, as I said before, you want any details with regards to where I'm going to school, where else I got accepted, where did I get rejected from, that's a long list. I don't know if you guys want to know that. And maybe my GPA, MCAT, whatnot, just feel free to send me a DM and I'll be happy to share that with you. But yeah, I hope you found this helpful. I will, as I said before, make another series. I'm not sure if I said this before, but I will make another series talking about my interview experiences at specific schools, just to help you guys out who may potentially interview at that school. And yeah, so as always, guys, I hope you're doing well. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I will see you in that next one. Take care.
Yes, adore you all of the time. I like to. I like to.